Okay, so just a quick intro here before we jump into this interesting session. I want to thank Brian on a personal level here for taking the time to fly all the way from Washington, D.C. Brian has been working very closely with the AFS organization. I think we have a lot of questions about the Ice Bucket Challenge. Obviously, I'd also like to thank our community partners for helping us put this together. Impact Hub, Grandster, Restaurant, the Arab team as well, Walda, Endeavor, and Rapra for just chipping in the booking of the Top Talks speaking sessions. So for us as marketeers, I think one of the biggest challenges we always face with our clients is how do we come up with the viable and most disruptive campaign add value for our clients' bottom line. For some of the NGOs or any NGO audience here, I think one of the biggest challenges we always face is how do we make sure that we maximize our donors' money to make sure that we spend it wisely. And I think tonight we can ask Brian a lot of the questions with answer some of these questions and also get some insights on why was this campaign so successful from your point of view. So without further ado, I'm going to just actually kick off this session. By the way, just so you know, if you do use our handler and hashtag, you are going to get a chance to win a dinner spot with the restaurant dinner we're having after the session. So feel free to tweet away. So Brian, I'm going to leave the floor to you and just ask you first, what was your role? Why were you involved, and how did you actually get involved in the AFS organization and campaigns? And how did it all start?
Well, thank you. Thanks, Ramsey, and thanks to all of you for showing up, and to Impact Hub, and to the online project. It's a real honor to be here. We had many media requests over the last few months, and when this came through my email, I thought, wow, how cool they would be by and talk about the Ice Bucket Challenge, and it certainly has been worth it. So very excited to talk about it. How many of you took the Ice Bucket Challenge? By show of hands. How many didn't take the Ice Bucket Challenge? So any of you that didn't take it, why didn't you take the Ice Bucket Challenge? I'm just curious. What's that? Too cold. Don't want to be on camera. What else?
Water.
Wasted water, sure. Any other reasons? Those of you that took it, why did you take it? Yeah.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Seemed like a good idea. Any other reasons why people did the challenge? Company initiative, that's good. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Just kind of curious to see what you all think. So, contrary to the opinion of many, this was not a planned campaign. This was not an initiative started by the ALS Association or anybody else. This was truly an organic campaign that happened because of the initiative of a few individuals. If you really want to get back to the beginning, it was a takeoff of the polar bear plunge, which is when people run into the ocean because it's freezing and they show that they're, alive and vital, and then they come out and throw up beers or something. And so this was a takeoff of that using social media, where you could dump cold water on yourself to show that you were tough. And at the time, you could donate to any charity or do anything you wanted. So a year before the Ice Bucket Challenge, I remember a friend of mine on Facebook did a video where he dumped water on himself and said he was challenging somebody else, and he was going to give money to his friend who was running for Congress. for a politician. So had nothing to do with ALS, had nothing to do with any sort of charity, but it was this sort of challenge thing. So there was this sort of undercurrent for about a year of people doing these online cold water challenges. Well, then in Florida, a professional golfer did it, and he had a relative that had ALS, and so he made his donation to the ALS Association. And then some people in Florida that were connected to ALS, which I should probably say is a disease, because not a lot of people really realize what ALS is. It's a disease that is fatal, always, 100%, within 2 to 3 years. It takes every muscle, voluntary muscle, so you can't ultimately end up breathing or swallowing. And so it's an incredibly devastating disease. So the ALS community realized that people were sort of doing this challenge and making a sort of fun way to draw attention to ALS, and they kept going. And then eventually it got to a minor league baseball player who has ALS, who was connected to some Boston Red Sox players, and we'll watch a little video about it here in a minute. That's sort of how this started. It really wasn't anybody that had a great idea of how do we raise attention for ALS, other than when the ALS folks in the community saw it and said, hey, we could use this. But it wasn't, as I've heard, like a planned thing by Facebook. You know, I have friends that work at Facebook, and they were just as stunned by the sort of response to this as anybody. So we can talk a little bit more about the origins later. We put together an infographic, and we can share the link later. That just kind of shows how it started. So here are some of the guys that had ALS, and then the celebrities and you. And so we ended up raising $115 million over the course of 6 weeks. Previously, the year before, that number was about $5 million. And mostly this is, the ALS Association had raised money from the ground up using walks, like charitable walks and runs. And this was the first time that it came to the national organization. The ALS Association is a national organization, but it has 38 different chapters around the United States. It's not an international organization, it's just a national organization, although there are many ALS associations. So anyway, back to Ramsey's original question. ALS Association didn't plan for this, they didn't expect this, and so within the first week or two of suddenly all this money coming in, all these media requests, we had a personal connection who called me and said, hey, we're desperate because my email inbox has 500 to 1,000 media requests a day, and I can't even get through them, so can you come? So I came in and started doing crisis communications. 2 weeks later, she went out on maternity leave for 4 months. And so their chief communication officer, at the most critical time of the organization in its history, was gone for 4 months. So they asked me to step in and be their chief communication officer, and part of my job was making sense of what was this thing that just happened, this Ice Bucket Challenge. And so I've tried to do that, and researched it, and talked to folks, and focus groups, and all this. And this, so what we talk about is sort of a culmination of that. That's how I got involved with the association. I'm still, I'm at a firm called Porter Novelli, and they're still one of my clients, and I still work with them very closely because they need a lot of help. It was a small nonprofit that had never seen this kind of activity, and just by random luck, they happened to sort of hit a lottery ticket. It just happened to be that this one particular disease took off, and it was all about ALS Association after that. So that's how I sort of got involved. What else?
So can we say that it was a community-driven campaign, more or less, or it was the community that really triggered this?
Yeah, absolutely. There were times when we sort of tried to fan the flames. So as the media started, this is can't really read it, but it maps all the different celebrities that did it. So you can see, who challenged whom, and see which celebrities did it. Unbelievable amount of celebrities for any particular one cause, and this was a key driver of why it became so successful. But from the ALS Association, what we tried to do was just fan the flames, and the media loved the numbers that we were putting out. So every day we would put out a new press release that said it was 3 million, then it was 5 million, at that time, we were going, wow, this is awesome, $5 million in a week, and then $7 million, and then there was a week in August from August 18th to August 25th where it was $10 million a day, $70 million in 1 week they raised. And so, the media was just eating those numbers up. Like, it was a fun story. And the other thing was it was great content. The videos themselves made great, interesting content at a time in the States when the news is so slow. August is a terrible news month because there's just not much going on. And also, it was a combination of it had been a daily barrage of such terrible news coming from Syria, coming from other parts of the world, where this was a nice counterbalance to that. That here's a positive story, people doing fun things for a good cause, a charity. And so it gave, it was more lighthearted than what the news had been for about a solid month. That helped as well.
We're going to touch on the Syrian Palestinian thing because we have another video that actually depicts what the view was from our part of the world, what the Ice Bucket Challenge crossed over to our region. But in the meantime, I think we'll share this video.
Where does the phenomenon begin?
So this was this is ESPN, which is the largest sports network in America. It's a huge. It's the only sports network essentially in America, and they did a sort of an 8-minute piece on the Ice Bucket Challenge, which was unheard of because most of the segments are 2 minutes and filled with highlights and everything. This was a big driver in a lot of people's awareness of the Ice Bucket Challenge and sort of the origin story. So this was the media's narrative of how it started. And like I explained, I think it was a little more organic, and the fellow that's featured in here was a key part of it, but it was much more of a bigger community than just one individual that's the focus of this. But this is a really good piece, and so I think you'll like it.
Where does the phenomenon begin?
I'm proud to take the Ice Bucket Challenge. Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS.
How does a movement start? This starts with one challenge.
I am doing this in honor of Pete Frates.
Pete Frates.
With one name.
Frates is swinging the bat today with an awful lot of confidence.
As a hard-charging outfielder, Pete Frates was the team captain at Boston College in 2007.
Slam home run for Pete Frates.
A lifelong Red Sox fan, his finest moment in baseball came in one at-bat on his favorite field.
Playing that family is just a dream come true for any kid growing up around here. I went 4-4, hit a home run at Fenway.
4 years after graduating, Frates was playing in a men's league in Boston in 2011 when he sensed something was wrong with his body. In March of 2012, after months of guessing, a neurologist delivered the news.
And he looked straight at Pete and said, honestly, I don't know how to tell a 27-year-old this. Pete, I believe you have ALS. I just started screaming, oh my God, my son's going to die.
I've always kind of been a positive guy. For me, it was, okay, here's what we're dealing with, let's go to work.
Pete made a choice. He would attack the disease. He would make a difference. He would make his fight matter. In March 2013, he earned an audience with the Food and Drug Administration in Washington with a simple goal: more attention and more action.
I asked him, let's speed up the process. Let's work together. And let's get this disease a thing of the past. Thank you.
You go in, you give these impassioned speeches, people are nodding, tears are coming down their face, they get it, they come up to you afterwards, And you're wondering, okay, so what are you going to do about it? What is the action item? What is the goal?
Some goals are more personal than others. On June 1st, 2013, Pete married Julie, who he'd met 8 months before he was diagnosed.
Mr. and Mrs. Peter Davis.
Now almost entirely confined to a wheelchair, he walked her down the aisle.
I just love him, and that's that. He's always telling me it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And I'm like, I don't think I'm worse yet. Like, this is it. Okay, enough. Like, can it get better now? It's hard to just watch someone you love so much just, you know, their body is just failing, and there's really nothing I can do about it. There's nothing the doctors can do.
2.5 years after the diagnosis, he requires a full-time nurse for most daily activities. He uses a feeding tube to eat. He speaks through the use of a computer. And in September, he's due to be a father. Back in May, during one of the last times he was able to talk at all, he described that feeling. So, how did one man with one fight become the center of a social movement? Last month, one of Pete's friends introduced him to the Ice Bucket Challenge, where people are asked to dump a bucket of ice water over their heads and post the moment on social media. The point? To raise awareness and funds for a given charity. Pete couldn't do it himself, but he could ask others to do it for his charity and his cause, ALS.
And this is all to raise awareness for ALS and Pete Fridays.
Suddenly, athletes all over Boston were doing it.
Support ALS and my friend Pete Fridays.
Then, athletes across the country.
Hi, I'm Sidney Crosby, and I accept Ice Bucket Challenge in support of all those with ALS, especially Pete Fridays.
Then, teams.
All right, JC here.
Celebrities.
Over the head.
Families. Everyone. In less than a month, the challenge became a viral sensation and a fundraising engine. The irony is that while Pete Frates challenged so many others, he never took the challenge himself. So, August 14th, in the perfect place, on a perfect day, the outfield at Fenway, Pete Frates did what he's asked so many others to do.
Ready for this?
Pete Frates and those who love him know the challenge goes on. But thanks to him, now so many others know it too.
Yeah, so you can see, how I think much integrity is involved with this. How genuine, how sort of honest this is, without in any way, being for some particular brand or purpose other than a good cause. there's such a difference, at least in the States, between just a genuinely good cause that people want to feel good about helping and something that you're buying. And so I think that's why this was so successful. Also, you can see, I still get sort of tears in my eyes when I see that, thinking about being a father myself. And I think that the Ice Bucket Challenge was a nice counterbalance to that heaviness. So here's a fun way to draw attention to a really horrible disease. You can see the effects of it on him. And so nobody wants to think about that side of it. But if you do the Ice Bucket Challenge, you can be helping him at the same time as you're, not so focused on what the drawbacks here. This is a disease that's existed for 75 years and they've made very little progress. So there's a lot of work to be done, and this was obviously a blessing for them.
Brian, you were asking the crowd who actually took the challenge and what reasons why they took it. Are there specific insights as to why someone took the challenge or decided not to take the challenge? And did that play a role in the success?
Well, so we realized, at Porter, that we had to figure out why people were doing this in order to get them to do it again and to donate to the cause again and to take advantage of this incredible moment. So we did survey research. The number one reason why people took the challenge, what do you think it was? You guys, yeah.
You were challenged.
Yeah, because they were challenged. That was the number one reason why somebody took it, not necessarily for a big cause. I mean, all these things were key, but when they were asked to identify one thing, it was because I was challenged. Now, the number one reason why people didn't do the challenge, what do you think that was? Because they weren't challenged. And so it clearly showed that the peer-to-peer nature of this was the most important driver. That it was because your friends were doing it, your family was doing it and challenging you for whatever reason. Maybe it was because it was for a good cause, maybe it was because they wanted to publicly humiliate you, maybe because they wanted to, show themselves. That was why people were doing this, for the challenge. So we realized that as we move forward with this, we need to focus on that challenge sort of an aspect of it. That's the key part of it. And so we asked people I'll just go through a little bit of survey research because I think you guys might find it interesting. The number one word that people associated the Ice Bucket Challenge with. Anybody? So they had a clear 60% plus attribute Ice Bucket Challenge to ALS, which is great for the ALS cause. Fun is the number one word. Fun. So people thought of it as fun. They also thought of it as like for a good cause. And then trendy was another one. Millennials were twice as likely to participate compared to others. And for the ALS Association, that's a huge deal. This is a disease that the only other time people connected to ALS was as if you knew somebody. Well, now 90% of people had no connection to ALS whatsoever. They didn't know anybody with ALS. They just knew the Ice Bucket Challenge. So part of the challenge for the ALS Association is taking all of those new donors. They got 2.5 million new donors, 600,000 of which opted to allow continued communication. So 600,000, up from 20,000 I think they had before. So there's 600,000 new people they can communicate with on a regular basis that don't know much about ALS. They don't know much about the science, they don't know much about the disease itself or the effects, and so they need to educate those people in order to continue to get them invested into one message and have a common thread and common way of thinking about things. Because for the first few months there, after this lottery ticket hit and they had all this money and they had all this attention and great awareness, nobody knew what to do. or more importantly, maybe everybody had an idea about what should be done. Consultants came out of the woodwork to say, I have a great idea. That's, every single probably PR firm and advertising agency in America was calling the ALS Association saying, we can help you. And obviously being from one of those firms that was serving as the interim communication officer, it was nice to say, we're good, thanks, we got it. But it is a lot of pressure to figure out what do we do at this moment. What do we do with this thing, this brand that they have, that people have such good relationship with and think so fondly of, because you don't want to screw that up. You don't want to let it waste either. So for the first few months, it was, I call it paralysis by analysis, which is thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And finally, we just had to say, let's just do something. We have to do something. We can't just continue to debate about how the money should be spent or how we should be messaging this. So we started to convene some conversations. And the heads of two of the major advertising agencies in the world, their chairmen are on the board of trustees for the New York chapter. And so they have a personal connection to ALS. They want to see this succeed again. So they, along with the whole national office and my team, are trying to figure out what that next thing looks like. We're trying to thread the needle, as I say, so that we keep it cool, but we don't try and, force it down people's throats. We still keep it wedded to the original purpose, but it's not Ice Bucket Challenge again. Maybe it's Ice Bucket Challenge-ish, something like this. It's really tricky to figure out how to thread that needle, and that's what we're working on. But we expect it to go off again because so many people want to do it. You mentioned corporate events. I think this is a perfect team building sort of corporate thing where people can do this. Baseball will still be a key part. You can see the importance of baseball. There's a number of factors here why I think it worked. It was genuine, like I mentioned, completely genuine. It wasn't a corporate sort of feel to it. It was fun. It was family. You saw the family. Lots of families did. It was a way to get family and friends together. There was a little bit of competition, without too much competition. It was friendly competition. It was camaraderie. It was baseball, which in August in America is a huge deal. It provided great content for the media. Endless videos that they could run, endless news about a new celebrity doing it or a new dollar amount that was raised. And again, I think the original integrity of it, because you knew you were doing it for these guys. So when we think about doing it again, people say, oh, you're not going to do the Ice Bucket Challenge again, are you? I go, Pat Quinn and Pete Frates say we have to do it again. They want us to do it again. They're desperate for us to do it again because that's all that they have. That's their only hope, is that enough people continue to do it and keep raising money that we can get a cure. We raised $115 million. The cost to get one drug to market, one new treatment in America, is $2.5 billion. So 115 isn't very much in the grand scheme of things. But what we're trying to do is grow the organization, grow the cause enough so that we can then continue to keep bringing in more money, and then finally we get some new treatments to market. So
were you technically able to, the payment mechanism-wise, were you able to have raise more money actually in terms of what you raised?
Yeah, so we were talking earlier about what are the sort of challenges or the takeaways or the missed opportunities, I'll say. We didn't, at the time, and this is probably valuable advice for some of you, because they didn't plan for this, they didn't have an easy way to donate money to the ALS Association. So a lot of people did their video, they said they were going to donate, and then you went to the ALS Association website and it was 80 miles long of information and all this, stuff that your average millennial is not going to take the time to fill out. There's a new startup in America called #Donate. There's probably something similar around here, but what it does is, anytime you use the #Donate, it automatically just sends $10 to whatever the charity is that you mentioned in your tweet or your Facebook post. And so had that existed during the Ice Bucket Challenge, I think we would have tripled the amount of money that we spent. Because people just didn't really want to go through this whole process of doing it. We did raise a lot of money from celebrities and from big donors. I think we ended up with 2,000 donors who gave $10,000 or more, which is just, for an NGO or a nonprofit, it's unreal. You get any one of those on a given month, you're happy. And to have 2,000 $10,000 checks. To have 500 celebrities again, I talk about paralysis by analysis. We have a wealth of celebrities, and we need to figure out how do we tap into just a few of them. Because had just one person before the Ice Bucket Challenge said they wanted to be a celebrity spokesman for ALS Association, we would have been thrilled. But now we have 500, and so instead of trying to figure out how do we do 500 celebrities again, let's just pick out 5. Let's just get some people talking.
Who was the first celebrity to do the challenge? Do you recall?
I think that, well, in terms of critical mass, I think that Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake were big. I think that Mark Zuckerberg was big. And I think that Bill Gates was probably big. But Bill Gates still has the most viewed Ice Bucket Challenge of anybody. You know, if you see Bill Gates thumping that, and he had obviously his creative twists, so he did it himself with a string. That sort of sent the message that if this global CEO is doing it, it's obviously an important cause. Let's
challenge. Bill Gates, my partner at Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, and Netflix's founder and CEO, Reed Hastings, to do this within the next 24 hours. You have 24 hours to do this, or you got to do it at $100. All right, here we go. That was really cool.
Let's go, ladies.
Alright, JT here. I'm accepting the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. 3, 2, 1.
I will be doing the Ice Bucket Challenge with ALS.
I'm Jim Dunn. I'm here with Rob Riggle, Horatio Sands, Steve Higgins, and The Roots. We've all been nominated to do the Ice Bucket Challenge to raise money for awareness for ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. All right! 1, 2, 3!
Probably the coolest, right? The extent of how far somebody would go just to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. I feel like we're asking a lot, we're talking a lot. Does anybody have any questions so far? Happy to address. So it's a good question. We put in our graphic, 220 million was raised worldwide, and that's from an informal sort of survey. There was a conference in Brussels recently, and it was all the major ALS organizations around the world. And our CEO went around and just asked the other CEOs, you know, how much did you raise? And so we kind of put that number together. It's probably more, maybe, but still, obviously a lot. And right now, part of the problem and one of the sort of missed opportunities, I guess, is that had this been a planned event, we could have done more to work with the global organizations to make this a global campaign instead of one that originated in the States and then sort of spread around the rest of the world. We got a lot of questions and comments at the ALS Association from media, from various parts of the world, where we just had to say, sorry, we're so overwhelmed with the national interest that we don't have offices elsewhere, we don't have people elsewhere. Please contact your local organization. Please donate to whatever your local ALS organization is. And we try to give them a link that identified who that organization is. But you know, a place like, I think, Chile, maybe I'm mixing myself in that might have been Peru, but one of those had previously had only a $20,000 annual budget for ALS, that ALS organization there. They made $100,000 from the Ice Bucket Challenge. So suddenly they go from, you know, this small amount to 5 times the amount. It made a huge difference for those folks down there. There's a constant sort of a thing within the community of, do we spend all the money on research? And this is something that those of you that deal with nonprofits probably can relate to, how you're spending the money exactly. A lot of people say just throw the money in research. Throw this $150 million of research because we need a cure now. We're desperate for a cure. The families are really desperate. Whereas, you know, we see a 3-pronged approach. You have to put money into research, you have to take care of those patients that have it and put money towards taking care of them, and then you have to put money towards advocacy and trying to raise awareness and trying to get more money from the government and trying to get more money from other sources. And a lot of times there's critics of saying, how are you spending money on raising awareness? We have a lot of awareness of ALS Association, right? Why do we need more awareness? Well, because if we don't do anything with it, then suddenly it dries up and it's gone, and that was that. And so we see it as sort of an investment that these three are an ecosystem that all work together. And so, you know, that may not be the same on a global level, but our CEO sort of wants to work towards an ALS without borders type of a model. We just sort of appropriate the Doctors Without Borders. But can we come up with one global sort of an organization that collaborates together to try and fight this? Because it is such a difficult disease to fight in such difficult science. What else? Any questions? Yeah.
You mentioned weather.
Yeah, so we asked about the weather in August. Absolutely. You know, it was brutally hot at the time in August in the States. And this was you know, a fun thing to do and stay cool. And so I think that was definitely key. And again, that late August time period, there's nothing going on. They call it the dog days of summer. And it's just nothing to do, and this was something fun to get people thinking. Yeah, so they went from, that's a good question, they went from, I think they went from maybe 2,000 Twitter followers to 20,000 Twitter followers, but then more importantly, they went from 30,000 Facebook followers to 300,000 Facebook followers. So clearly a key approach as we think about how do we reach these people, again, has to be through Facebook. You know, and it's obviously because the Facebook platform was so much easier to share these videos. So when we think about Instagram, they don't have an Instagram feed. Again, this was a very sort of small nonprofit, didn't expect this to happen, didn't plan for it, you know, again, all these things. You know, I think about that Jimmy Fallon video with the red buckets where they're all dumping. Had we planned this, it would have said ALS Association on those buckets, you know, and we would have sold red buckets at Home Depot, you know, so you could use an ALS Association bucket to do all this. It wasn't planned, it just happened. And so a lot of the times we got criticism of, for instance, the water. You're wasting water, and people would write really angry letters about how can you be wasting water. There's a big drought in California, and we said, we didn't write the rules, we didn't make any rules, there are no rules, you know, we're just the lucky beneficiary. We tried to obviously say, okay, we encourage you to repurpose your water. You know, Matt Damon used toilet water, so we could use toilet water. Charlie Sheen just dumped cash over his head, or just make a donation. You know, come up with a clever way of doing it instead of using water. We didn't own the rules, we didn't write the rules, and this speaks to an important point. ALS Association does not own the Ice Bucket Challenge. People associate the Ice Bucket Challenge with the ALS Association, but when the ALS Association sought to seek ownership of it, they sought to trademark it. And this was against council because they were concerned about people using it nefariously. That people were creating fake Twitter handles, fake websites to say Ice Bucket Challenge, and then people would donate to just a for-profit scammer. So they were concerned about that and thought that they trademarked Ice Bucket Challenge and state that it would enable them to crack that down. And there's a nonprofit called the Susan Komen Foundation, which you may be familiar with, which is breast cancer awareness. They've trademarked the pink ribbon in pink color for breast cancer. So anytime a breast cancer group in the States uses the pink ribbon or pink color, Susan Komen comes down and says you can't do that and cracks down, and they get a lot of grief for that. Maybe justifiably so. People say, what difference does it make if it goes to this breast cancer nonprofit or this one? And they say that's people think that they're donating to the Susan Komen Foundation. So they were concerned and they wanted to make sure that people who were donating to the Ice Bucket Challenge, they knew that it was going to the ALS Association. I think they have a good case at this point. Everybody associates with it. But the timing was not right. It was at the height of the Ice Bucket Challenge, and suddenly the group said, no. We own this. This is our owner. This is our community thing. And you trying to seize it and take it as your own, no. So when you think about that marketing campaign or that viral campaign, if that is truly organic, don't try and appropriate it, because the reaction is so much worse than if you just sort of go along with it. So, well, a definite lesson learned there on their behalf. Go.
Do you think that you could reach the same level in terms of awareness if you would reach through pictures instead of videos?
With pictures? No, I don't think so. I think that it came at a time when this is, item number 12 on the reasons why this was so successful. It came at a time when cell phones started to do really good video. They made it really easy to post that video on your social media. And so people wanted to publicly display themselves as being a good person, a nonprofit-oriented person. And so I don't think it would have been successful with videos. With the photos. It was, I think, the video itself that definitely helped. And that gave TV news something to show as well. Other questions? Yeah.
Success, we discussed a lot of elements, but I would think about this when we did not have that density of celebrities at the beginning. We had already the following on mainstream news and on social. I don't think, it's all great that you get all these factors, but they gave the firepower. Because you're talking about celebrities, nominating celebrities, and then it was more fun to see a celebrity do it, and then also somebody like Bill Gates who's like, oh my god, I have to check this out. And then all the rest of the factors came into play. But if you would take the same roadmap, take out the celebrities, try the same roadmap,
absolutely, without a doubt. And that's why, when I came here, I started to hear from some folks that thought that this was somehow orchestrated, that this was somehow designed. I heard that Facebook had planned this, and that this was a campaign to try and create awareness of Facebook's use of video as a platform. And all these celebrities never would have gone along with this if this had been promoting a particular cause, a particular brand, rather. So, without a doubt, the celebrity influence was huge and a huge driver of it, especially those stars with big Twitter followers and big social media followers. Justin Bieber did it, and Lady Gaga both did it. Those are the two biggest, I think, Twitter handles in the world. Yeah, exactly. The biggest YouTube. So, without a doubt, and that's proof of why you cannot replicate this. This was truly a one-time organic thing. The best that we can do, and I know that's why you all are here, is to take those key elements, those things that we can take away from it that help influence it. And you're never going to get those celebrities on board unless it's a truly genuine good cause that they don't feel like they're giving their name for.
I was going to say, you guys more or less inherited this. It was grassroots, but now it's kind of yours. How do you see this going next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? How are you going to keep it fresh, essentially?
Well, that's, as I mentioned, that's where the biggest creative minds in advertising are trying to come up with that way to sort of keep it fresh. I would like to say that this would be even bigger, but I don't see that happening. I see it being a constant sort of a steady annuity that happens every year, kind of like the way that a walk does, or Stand Up to Cancer has an event, and that people do it for fun. It's August, it's hot, and what we want to do is say, who are you challenging this year, right? Who's going to be the one that you're challenging, or what are you going to do with your challenge this year? We're kind of talking about this out loud. What's going to be unique about your challenge this year? So that the question isn't, are you going to do it? But how are you going to do it? Who are you going to do it with, and why? And I think that's sort of, you have to sort of say, again, Pat Quinn, who's one of the guys that started this, says we have to keep it going. We have to keep the momentum going. Nancy Frady's, who was featured in the video, the mother of Pete Frady's, she's on our board now, and she says we have to keep this going. There is still a huge, strong affinity for the Ice Bucket Challenge. And I realize that people want it to be something new and something bigger, and we're trying to do that. But at the very least, we have to sort of keep it going.
Have you associated a month or a day for this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's not set in stone, but we think August again. August is when it's hottest, so there's less news, and so yeah, we would say August. Well, because it happened in August, and we couldn't do it again this winter because it's too soon coming off the heels of it. So doing it again the exact same time next year seems to make the most sense. If we wait too long, I think, till next winter, it may be gone. The lack of news during this time is a key driver. Public awareness of it is key, and TV news is driving a lot of that.
I want to challenge. In August, we had major showing this video.
عجبتني فكرة صقر المي اللي كل الناس وكل العالم كل النجوم بدأوا يعملوها ففكرنا نعمل منها نسخة فلسطينية. جينا ندور على صقر المية طبعا صعب جدا يعني صقر المية هونش على ضغطنا على حالنا وقلنا الله بالله صقر المية اكتشفنا انه مش ممكن نبرد لانه ما فيش عندنا رح نعرف نجيب ثلج ولا حنعرف نبرد المية. فحبينا نعمل نسخة فلسطينية فاكتشفنا انه بلد فقررنا من هذا المكان هو تبع المنازل اللي تهدمت في غزة ندير على حالنا. الآن التحدي بدناش نذكر أسماء بعينها هذا التحدي أي واحد على بهذه الطريقة أو أي سيارة مناسبة بشرفنا وإحنا محتاجين زي ما إحنا محتاجين دعم مادي محتاجين أيضا كل المواقف. مش عاملين الشيء هذا عشان التبرعات لأنه الحمد لله مش حنطلب تبرعات الإنسان اللي حابب يقدم شغلة يسوي كتب قصة لفلسطين ويحاول يقدمها. اللي ما عندوش يقدم يحكي كلمة يسجل خصوصا الناس اللي متابعين أو معجبين يعني لو كتب كلمة حق وقال أنا مع المقاومة أنا مع فلسطين أنا مع غزة أنا مع المظلومين بكل كثير شكرا له لأنه كلنا محتاجين لكل المواقف يعني إذا كانت الأنظمة شوية متخاذلة أو كثير متخاذلة بدنا الناس المتابعين اللي لهم جمهور يتعاطفوا معنا ويعملوا زي ما أنا بدي أعمل أو على الأقل يسمونا كلمة طيبة بحق الفلسطينيين في غزة. تعال كثير طبعا ما فيش عندنا مياه فهذا اللي موجود هذه الامكانيات اللي عندنا في فلسطين وما فيش مياه حمام يعني لو شفتوني في التقرير بعد هيك وانا مدبر ومعطر وحاول تتعاطفوا معنا. شكرا كثير.
I'm Dusty with the city again, trying to sympathize. So how many of you have seen that before? Yeah, so I don't think anybody really saw that in the States. I mean, my perspective on it is that it was a brilliant move by him to take this cultural phenomenon and appropriate it as his own and to spread a political message. And so it's obviously, I think, very effective. I don't know how much that sort of message spread in the sense that maybe this one video spread a lot versus a lot of people did what he was doing. You guys can tell me. Did more people do this sort of a thing? Yeah.
I also think that the reason why they started spreading these pieces of content is because they felt that the celebrities are all lobbying for the ALS cause, which is obviously a devastating cause. But then at the same time, in August we had this major catastrophe happening, and all the global leaders and the celebrities were throwing ice water on themselves. So this is just to give like a flavor of the controversy that, from our point of view, what some of our people were actually criticizing the campaign to a certain extent.
And I certainly heard that today when I was talking with some colleagues at lunch. Some people were very negative against the Ice Bucket Challenge. I mean, how can you be negative against the Ice Bucket Challenge? It's fun. It's it's just people doing things for a good cause. And they were saying, well, there was far more important things to worry about, and that this awareness should be used for something else or for another cause. And my perspective on that is, we got this also a lot, which was people giving money to the ALS Association are now not going to give any money to another disease cause, which is just a myth. People give money to a cause that they want to give money to, a cause for whatever reason. And if they give money to ALS, they'll give money to something else that they want to give money to. And so, my thought is, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can do this at the same time. I don't know. I mean, I would assume ALS is a big problem here, as it is around the world, because there's no unique identifier for ALS that can strike anybody at anywhere at any time. So I think both causes should be sort of. My thought is that brand marketing, sort of PR person would be, and this is just for the United States. This may work here, but it was that fun aspect of the Ice Bucket Challenge that helped drive it so much. If it had been, it was because it was that counterbalance to the serious nature of ALS that people wanted to do it for fun and not think about that hard part. He's asking you to think about that. And again, that's totally justifiable, and it may work, with a particular audience, but that would not have worked if, let's say we had, I'm trying to think of a controversial, abortion is a very controversial position in America, or gay marriage. If it was a serious message about abortion or gay marriage and you were trying to do a similar thing to the Ice Bucket Challenge, it wouldn't work, because it didn't unite everybody. This united everybody in America. And it seems this obviously unites a large population here. But I think it was the fun aspect that is maybe different. Again, brilliant on him.
And then also the negative people, if they're complaining about this, why they don't do their own initiative?
Yeah.
Why you said that this guy did? Why who said that does not want, didn't support this guy, for example?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of causes, not only here in Africa, there's people starving. I mean,
that's right.
That's all.
Yeah, you see, right? You guys maybe have seen some of the offshoots of the Ice Bucket Challenge where nonprofits are trying to do something similar. So there was something called the Wake Up Selfie, where celebrities would wake up in bed or anybody that got challenged would wake up in bed and immediately take a picture of themselves to show what their bed had looked like and how they looked in bed. But Wake Up Selfie, and that was to try and raise money for it was Sudanese refugees, I think. There was something for testicular cancer for men, where men would grab their crotch and stick their hands up and say, it was quote feeling nuts. Obviously was kind of a striking sort of an image and striking language that took off a little bit. Hugh Jackman did it, and some other people, but never sort of the same level. So everybody is sort of trying to work to find that next thing. But the only things that have really risen so far have been for nonprofits. I haven't seen a corporation or a brand do something similar or take these lessons yet. It's not to say we're not trying. I guarantee you that every major brand has somebody saying, how can we take what the Ice Bucket Challenge did and replicate it? One of the things I've said about the problems for the ALS Association is, had this been a brand that they planned on, if this had been a vanilla Coke, and suddenly vanilla Coke became the best-selling soft drink in the world, and $115 million came in from vanilla Coke, Coke would have 20 people, an office of 20 people devoted to how do we sell more vanilla Coke, how do we keep this going, because this is awesome. ALS Association doesn't have 20 people that they can put on the Ice Bucket Challenge to figure out. They're a nonprofit with not a lot of resources, and that's part of the challenge of of my job and of others is we don't have the resources to give this the full thing that a big corporation could, and that's unfortunate. But fortunately, we do have some brands that are interested in doing it again, and they're devoting their resources, and so we're hopeful that they will continue to do that. Yeah, absolutely. So had it been planned, would it have had the same effect? I don't think so. I think when people ask me how do you make a viral thing, the number one rule to being viral is don't try to be viral. Because people, the audience, the community sniffs that out and immediately rejects it. Your only goal here is to get popularity, is to get followers, is to get views of whatever it is that you're selling. When the most viral things are truly authentic and genuine because nobody planned on them being viral, right? I can't think of a viral campaign, with the exception of one, which was really brilliant recently, which was Coke had their names. Each individual Coke bottle had a name. And so people would find one in the store and, here's Brian's Coke bottle and give it to Brian and say, and so that actually won the top award over the Ice Bucket Challenge in the corporate advertising world. Of course, that's because it's a corporate advertising world and they're a big corporation. I think the Ice Bucket Challenge should have taken it, but anyway, that's one maybe example. But generally, things don't go viral unless it's really truly organic.
This money raised, like you said, 20 million or 1 million. You said there is a challenge how you spend the money for advocacy, research, taking care of patients. How you plan for this? For NGO, what do you advise? How you invest this money?
Yeah, so what's the advice for NGOs on how to spend the money, how to sort of, and for my job more importantly, is how do you communicate how you're spending the money? Transparency, transparency, transparency. You have to be open and honest with the public about how you're spending your money. There was something called Coney 2012. You guys remember this? So when I looked back at events and similar campaigns to try and make sense of this Ice Bucket Challenge and put it in perspective, this Coney 2012 was Coney's the African warlord where there was a campaign. He was killed, right? See that? I think he might have just recently been killed. He's an African warlord that somebody put together a video that in 2012 we're going to get Coney. We're going to get the whole community to take advantage, to take action and stop this African warlord who was recruiting little boys and killing them. It became the #1 Facebook, YouTube thing ever. Everybody was doing Coney 2012. People, they raised a ton of money. They didn't have a sophisticated organization. They didn't tell people how they were spending their money. And their CEO had a weird nervous breakdown where he was filmed walking around the streets of Santa Monica naked, muttering to himself, and killed the whole sort of momentum of it. But it was because they weren't being transparent about their money that the larger community turned away and said, this is suspect. You have your treasurer as a CEO. You have your treasurer on the board of trustees who's taking 25% of the donations to salary, and you're not disclosing what you're doing with the rest of the money. So my chief communication officer that just came back from maternity leave and I are trying to say to the rest of the organization, we need clear infographic of here's exactly how the money's spent, here's the pie chart of the donations, so that, because when people donate to the ALS Association, they don't really care how the money is being spent. They don't know anything about ALS. I'm talking about the vast majority of people now. They don't care how the money is being spent. They don't care what it's being spent. All they care about is that you're actually doing something good with it. And the only way that that will ever not be the case is if a media reporter puts out a story that says they're not spending their money well. They're not being good stewards of the money. So it's their whole purpose needs to be, we're being open and honest, check our books, check anything. And that also speaks to, why do you want more money from me, right? If you're not telling me how I'm using it now, why should I give you more money? So we, as I said, we've taken an approach of trying to say, over the next 5 years, we want to be able to fund a certain number of research projects, so that means holding on to the money for a few years, which makes people upset because they think you're not spending the money, you're holding the money, you're keeping it for yourselves. But we're trying to say, if we fund 20 projects right now with this $115 million, and then next year 5 of them show promise, but we've spent all the money, how does that help? It's more important to fund those projects over the years because it is a long-term fight. It's unfortunately a long-term project.
And you kind of become a victim of your own success, and that's clear what you said. Is there no way that you can use this to continue the momentum, to use people to communicate where you have spent the money? At the moment, whatever you do is not going to match what you have. What about if you challenge people to show in a different way where the money's gone, or try and keep them involved in what you're doing and continue to support you? Otherwise, I donated, but I am one of those people that is like, where is my money? I want to know.
Yeah, it's kind of a fine line, right? Because you want to know, you may want to know where the money's going, but do you really want to get into the particular gene therapies and the particular science? So
no, but it's nice to see that communication continue. And
that's right. Yeah, so it's a fine line between giving people too much information so that they are turned off because of not only the science is incredibly complex, but if you really want to get to know the patients with ALS, it's incredibly emotionally difficult to have to, so we've talked about would people donate to help one particular person, or would that be too much of an emotional lift for them? It's just, they can't do that. It's too intense. Well, so what we figured out, we did a whole day of brainstorming at Porter Valley with the whole staff and said, what's the key insight into why this was so successful and raised so much money? And it was because we didn't get people to donate. You got people to donate. Everybody got people to donate. So it wasn't just that traditional donor model where you write a check. It was your friend encouraging you to donate to us, and so on. And so now it's peer-to-peer fundraising where we're saying, you've already invested in this, you got your friends to do it, so now it's your job to help them continue to do that. So I think as we start to move toward more outward-facing messages with these donors, it's get your friends to continue to do this. So we are working towards that. The problem is it's an old, sort of problematic organization that has its own challenges, that wasn't ready for this and can't be at that sort of a level internally to really be doing that.
Even if that was something like an infographic, and I could plug in, I nominated these 3 people, and nominated these 3 whatever, and that is something powerful for me to share with my friend and go, look, that movement that I did created, right? This is the action that I was responsible for.
We are trying to do that sort of messaging, but there's so many things on the plate. You know what I mean? That's more of the development office and their role. And there's lines between development and trying to raise more money off this versus people in care services that are more concerned about that, and people that are more concerned about the research. And so there's we were trying to integrate everything, but I think you raised a completely valid point. I'll take that back to DC. Yeah.
probably the most famous ALS victim in the world is Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
And he's obviously got a lot of publicity this year because of this film.
Yes.
Did you ever connect with him? Did he ever get involved with the campaign? Was there anything between your society and him?
I don't have a great answer to that, but it was my kind of belief that he didn't really associate with the motor neuron. It's called motor neuron disease in Britain. He wasn't very active in that sort of a community over there. I know that with the film and his desire, the film is, if you haven't seen it, is The Theory of Everything, which is a great film. And Eddie Redmayne is going to win the Best Actor Oscar for it because he just does an incredible portrayal of one person going through this disease. I think that as he's tried to get the film out, because he just thinks it's a good story, he liked it, he let them use his voice for it. I think that he's becoming more active in that, but I don't think that I think here's another thing. It's also, they were also hesitant for a long time to use him because he's an outlier. He's lived with the disease for 50 years, 60, for so long that 99.9% of people die within 3 years. And so there's a sense of urgency that he sort of doesn't embody. Now, clearly he embodies, the hope and the spirit that you can do that and you can continue to live. But he is such an outlier. Now, I think with this movie, with other sort of things, they're starting to realize maybe we should portray this as a spectrum. That there's a lot of different ways to live with ALS. Doesn't have to be a quick death sentence, even though it usually is. But I think that they will start to continue to do a little bit more. It's a good question. I think it would have eventually happened. I think something like this would have happened because there were these series of cold water challenges that one particular disease may have risen up and it may have been in a different place and it may have been with a different group of celebrities. I do think it would have happened. Had it been ALS Association? No, only because of this particular group of guys who had the ALS community wrapped around them and because he had celebrities. But I could see that somebody with diabetes, challenged a particular friend and a celebrity, and that became the cause, and suddenly diabetes was the beneficiary of this. I do think it was sort of a natural progression of this display of self, this display of self-giving and charity, video, fun. So I do think it would have probably taken off, but not for those particular people who are practicing.
I think what she said about saying where you were spending your money is actually very, very beneficial. For example, there are many people, there's a growing cynicism towards medical research because now people are just donating. For example, there's a whereabout that they found a cure for cancer, but they're just going out in circles on purpose, just so that the research wouldn't stop and the donations wouldn't stop, so that people don't lose jobs and stuff like that. So a few statistics every now and then about where you are within that research actually be very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to that infographic. I mean, we try to do, we do have on our ALS Association website all the research that you want. It's not packaged in a friendly way for the average non-traditional donor, so our new donors, our Ice Bucket donors. It's not packaged in the way. It's packaged for, the only way that you came to the ALS Association before was if you had a connection, if you're a family member, if you're a friend, and then you were interested in the science. So there hasn't been folks interested in the science of ALS in a non-serious, deep immersion way. So it is that sort of happy medium. I mean, we put, can you go down one? So we put care, public policy, research. Under care, we're increasing grants to our certified centers of excellence. We're expanding access. We're broadening the scope of care. We're speeding up improvements in the public policy arena. We're encouraging companies to invest in ALS research. We're breaking down barriers. So one of the ways we spent the money was to create an FDA program to to make it easier for drug companies to get a drug through the pipeline, because FDA approval in America is so incredibly complex and rigorous that if there's not a huge market for ALS drugs, then why is a company going to invest and go through that process of getting a drug approved? Well, if they can incentivize these companies by making it easier to get drugs through the pipeline, then they will do it. Now, the problem is people say, well, why are you essentially doing something that the drug companies themselves could do? Well, because they're not going to. The drug companies aren't going to bring a drug to market unless there's a profit. And that's the way it works in America. Obviously it varies around the world, but they're just not going to do it unless it's in their profit interest. And so if we can take this and encourage them to do that by speeding up this pipeline, then it's going to benefit everybody. So it's an excellent question, an excellent point. Again, I will take that back. And we are trying to make a more public-facing website for this new base of people interested in ALS. Because really, it was the average age of our website visitors was 60 to 80 before. Now it's 20 to 40. So completely different crowd, completely different expectations, and it just takes time to sort of adjust to it. One thing we did was we recommended that they put their CEO on a satellite media tour, which is where she sits down in front of a camera and does about 50 local television station interviews in a row for 5 minutes. So she just looks in the same camera, they switch the feed to the next, to Kansas City, to Dallas, and she just does a series of interviews and she gives the same answers, and it's usually the same questions, but that gives it this sort of local flavor of my local TV anchor is talking to the head of the ALS Association about this. And, then the local news, because they're talking to the CEO, want to air more ice bucket videos and talk about it more. So we did things like that. We never sort of really did anything major other than respond to media requests and try and, pick little spots here and there to sort of insert our voice, but we never were trying to be, as I said, it was the fact that we weren't driving this that helped make it, because people thought, we're just helping this small nonprofit and the small disease that didn't have all this, and so it's kind of cool because suddenly now it's snowballing and we can all see. People like to see that number go up and up and up. It's like in America when there's a lottery ticket, and the number keeps getting bigger because nobody's winning it, there's more and more craze about it. And so people like that. And then eventually it died and nobody's talking about it. But folks in America didn't really realize what a global phenomenon it became. I've tried to explain that to them and say, this really isn't just an American thing, this was a global thing. That's true about everything in America. They never think about the global effect.
The idea of the challenge was born in America, right?
What's that?
The idea of the challenge was born in America. Then it has been viral, and it has been worldwide. So how you have managed the communication with the other ALS organizations? What's so big as an impact? How you have managed that?
Yeah, so we had this conference where they all got together in Brussels recently and exchanged ideas. I wish I could say that we had the resources to, when we're planning this next step, think about how this is going to be a big global thing again, but we can't. We literally don't have the resources to plan for a huge global.
When you have seen that it has been global, how you have reacted, with the other ALS organizations?
It was such an onslaught of attention and requests from people that sadly we had to say, we can't talk to you, Beijing Daily News, about this. Maybe if it was a huge world capital we would, but we got so many from, all the various Chinese provinces. We just had to say, we don't have the time or resources to talk to you. Please find somebody related to the ALS cause in your own. It was the same sort of a canned answer, which was please find those local ALS resources and shed light on them and bring bring attention to them because we don't represent the whole world. We're for the cause, but we don't have resources in those places, so we can't give them to you. Again, had we planned this, it would have been, yeah. And that's sad, right? It's sad because you do have this thing that could be even bigger and could raise more money for ALS and could help advance this, but it's just too difficult.
Just an observation. If I look at that and I'm looking at, okay, it's going to cost me $1 billion to do one new drug to market, but over 5,000 people are being diagnosed with this condition. But we know that, like, I look at that as in, okay, I got caught up in a challenge, which is great, but how can I ever make an impact or a dent into this by doing this? And then you've got this huge responsibility now. I know you weren't planning it. It would have happened if but it happened. And now you do have this responsibility to keep it going. Well, that's 112 million or whatever it was you earned that you raised. It's nothing because it doesn't actually make a dent in what you need to do. And it's pointing out problems that.
Yes, from your lips to God's ears, right? Yes, that is the challenge. That we try to say to people is we have to keep this going. We have to keep doing this because otherwise it was just sort of false hope.
Okay, it's huge, but it's not in the impact of so many other NGOs out there that
Absolutely.
big numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's not an easy answer to you. I think you make that a fair point. We want to. What we're trying to do now is say, have a more practical goal. We're not going to cure ALS immediately, probably not. But we can try and bring a treatment to market that prolongs life. There's only one drug in 75 years that prolongs life by 2 months. So a little bit, but not much. If we can bring one new treatment to market that prolongs life and makes this a disease that you live with instead of one that you die from, then this Ice Bucket Challenge has all been worth it. And that's a much more attainable goal than trying to find the cause, which is much more difficult. Because there's find a cure, because there's no known cause. We don't know what causes this still. So, good point again.
I think even more valuable, it's not really a question, it's still an observation, but I think even more valuable than the money you raise is the awareness that you generated. I think, speaking for myself, I still used to call it Lou Gehrig's disease. A lot of people just didn't even make that association that it was the same thing, that it's ALS. So, in the top, tier of worst, diseases and such, I don't think a lot of people even knew that ALS was up there. You'll think of HIV, you'll think of cancer and all the terrible things, but the awareness that was generated through this campaign probably worth its weight in gold, much more so than maybe the money, which, of course, things being so expensive, the money probably won't do too much, but the awareness factor, I think, is what the value was behind this.
Yeah, this completely reshaped the public's perception of a disease. It was always known as Lou Gehrig, who was this baseball player in New York, the New York Yankee that died of it. He gave his famous speech 75 years ago. He said, I consider myself the luckiest man alive, if you've ever seen this video. People knew that he died of the disease, that's all they knew about it. And I don't think that's a great legacy for him either. He should have a legacy of, that he was this great player and lived with the disease, and his legacy is helping to cure it for others. So I think the rebranding of ALS Association from Lou Gehrig's into ALS has been a huge part of this, and just a general public interest and awareness of it. It is only 5,000 people, but for those 5,000 people, it's obviously tremendously devastating, and we're going to continue to try and fight it for those people, and other organizations will continue to fight for themselves. There's not an easy answer.
I think we can end with this.
Thank you. This was what we put out at the end of.
Before this summer, most people weren't talking about ALS. All it took to change everything was a challenge.
You want to do this Ice Bucket Challenge?
I accept the challenge. Challenge accepted. No one could have predicted this amount of attention for ALS. But we're incredibly grateful to everyone who was willing to stand up to a disease that steals your ability to walk, talk, and even breathe before it takes your life.
I'm happy to donate to this very worthy cause. We can create awareness and change.
Let's do this. Every video, every share, and every donation contributed to the greatest outpouring of support our cause has ever seen. On behalf of people living with ALS and their families, thank you.
So that was what we put out at the end to the donors, the new donors, to just try and wrap up everything. And now we're going to do the next thing, so stay tuned. I think Ramsey has given out my email or Twitter handle if you guys want to keep in touch. Always, I'll stick around and have any questions. But really, thanks a lot for coming out, and thanks to the Impact Hub. I have to go on a 15-hour flight back to DC after this tonight, into a storm. I'm terrified, but it was all worth it because this was such a really nice event, and you guys are all great. So thanks again.